Today's video is pretty much going to be a continuation of the previous one. We're going to continue working on this silt spoiler. We're going to finish off this top. We're going to grind down these screws here. I gotta prep this before I do any glass work, but pretty much we're going to try and finish this thing off and mount it up, and then we're going to finish off this other side. If you remember, we didn't finish up this side. There's still the clay underneath there, so we're going to pull this thing off first thing, get all the clay out of there, get all the foam out of there, glass this up, and while that's drying, we can work on this. We now have both sides to the same exact point, and for now we're going to leave this alone. At some point we are going to have to level all this out, get this gap straight, make sure the trunk is sitting exactly where we want it to sit, and from there we'll use that as a reference point to mount our taillights perfectly. But that's going to happen in a later video. The rest of today is going to be focusing on this thing. We have to wait for this to dry here. We can sand that down flat, and that's going to be it for the roughed in bottom part. We're gonna have to flip it over, do the same exact thing we did on this side, and both sides should be relatively roughed in and pretty close. And then from there, it's just filler and paint prep. This is dry enough now that we're going to flip it over and do the same exact thing on this side. We're going to take out these screws, trim it down a little bit or sand it down a little bit, and then add some more fiberglass to fill this in. And then from there, we'll have our basic shape done. So I quickly ground down these sides here, and before we get too intense with the bodywork, I'm just gonna mount this thing up. We're gonna be using rib nuts up in here. So we're gonna jack up the rear end of the car. We're gonna mark where this needs to be. We're gonna drill some holes in the body of the car. Then we can mark on here where we need to drill and put our rib nuts, and that's how this thing's gonna be attached. We have 3 bolts holding it on each side. That should be more than enough, but I think we may try and drill those out and reinstall the nutserts with some resin to really try and hold those in there. I didn't really crank down on them because it kind of scares me that they're gonna spin in there and it's just gonna be a mess, because then I'm gonna have to try and drill those out in the little spaces that I have on either side in the trunk. Besides that, it's on there, and it's on there really good. It's really sturdy, but a couple of issues. You can see that there is a little bit of a gap here, and That's because it's almost too wide by about 1/4 of an inch total. It's kind of unfortunate, but you could see that there's maybe 1/8 of an inch here gap, and that means that there's about 1/8 of an inch gap on that side. The only thing to do is to either shorten it by that tiny little bit, or we're gonna have to mold this so that it fits up against the car, which is probably what's gonna happen. This isn't a big deal at all. We can bodywork this super easily to go up against the car, and it's fitting really well. I don't think there's any reason to try and cut that any closer. Right here is where the pinch weld is, so there's almost no room for it to go in anymore anyways, and even when we did push it over, it didn't fit up exactly. So I'd say if we're gonna have to do this regardless, we might as well just do this and see if it looks good. If not, we can always cut it and make it shorter. It's not that big of a deal, but that's probably not gonna happen. We're probably just gonna shape this. Overall, this thing looks great. Obviously, it's not finished yet. I really just wanted to get it all glassed up and get it close. That's kind of what I'm trying to do to everything. I'm just trying to get everything close, and that way I can call in some help, some backup, and we can really hit this thing hard with some people who really know what they're doing, and we can go from there, bodywork everything, block everything, and do all the crazy manual labor under a shorter period of time. But for right now, this is plenty sturdy. It's gonna work. It's not perfect. It doesn't look great, but it's pretty close, and it doesn't need a ton more work to look perfect. I know this video is gonna be a little bit shorter than usual, and that's because we're pretty much done with that for now. We didn't have a ton of work to do, but we are gonna be moving on, and tomorrow we are gonna be working on the duckbill. We're gonna be completely creating that and doing all that stuff and doing all that glass work. So this is where I'm gonna be ending it for today. If you guys are interested in helping out the channel and the progression of this car, I do have merchandise in the link in the description. Anyways, guys, that's gonna be it for today. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.